What if Light became a nobody? Book 1, Organization 13, Chapter 1, Number 15. G'day everyone, Rune here, and no, this is not a prank what if. Yes, I am aware that Kingdom Hearts still technically hasn't ended, and likely never will end, but this is my birthday month, and in my birthday month, I get to do whatever what if I want, no matter how out there it is. Therefore, I'm going to be writing a crossover what if between one of the most convoluted video game series I have ever seen and one of the most fascinating mangas I have ever read. And hey, Kingdom Hearts is already a multiverse that has added The World Ends With You to the mix, so I say anything is fair game. With all that said, let's start the fun. We start the story at the end of the Yotsuba arc, the moment Light touches the Death Note and his memories return. This is the moment that he had set up to happen the moment he'd given up the Death Note, and yet, now that it's here, he hesitates. During the investigation of Yotsuba, something had happened, something that Light could have never calculated. The darkness within his heart had weakened, and the light had grown in power. Where before, the darkness had overpowered the light, causing Light to become Kira, now the two halves are in complete equilibrium, resulting in Light's choices to come to a screeching halt as the two halves war with each other over what should happen next. Before I continue, I just need to get this out there. With the main character of Death Note's name being what it is, there's literally no way for me to avoid all the Kingdom Hearts puns or the name confusion. Please just ignore them. I promise I'm going to avoid them and try to make this section of the story as easy to follow as possible. The Light wants to hand the Death Note back to L, to bring an end to the bloodied road that they'd been walking up until Light gave it up while under arrest. However, the darkness wants them to finish what they started. They've already dirtied their hands with so much blood. If they stop now, then all of the death and erosion of their own soul will have all been for nothing. The desire to stop and the desire to press on war within Light, though he's only dimly aware of it. Unable to come to a solid conclusion, he decides to stall for time by comparing the names within the notebook with the names of confirmed victims in the task force's database. So distracted by the swirling thoughts in his head and the task he's attempting to use as a distraction, he doesn't notice the way Elle is staring at him, as though he's waiting for Light to say or do something. After only a few seconds of trying to quiet the storm of his mind, Light's attention is suddenly drawn back to what is happening outside of the helicopter. Fearing that his capture will inevitably lead to a death sentence, Higuchi had broken free of the policeman holding him and had, somehow, managed to grab a gun. With eyes still covered, the man begins running blindly in the direction of the helicopter while firing the gun recklessly behind him. Seeing the threat that Higuchi poses to their allies, Wataru immediately reacts, firing his own gun at the fugitive and sending a bullet straight through his skull. Light watches in shock and fear as Higuchi falls to the street, dead. With the man dead, the ownership of the Death Note instantly transfers to the one holding it, i.e., Light. With the option of simply handing the Death Note back to L and forgetting his whole role as Kira again now gone, an all-new battle begins to wage in his mind and heart. Darkness argues that it's too late to back out now that Higuchi is dead, and Light owns the notebook once again. Light argues that it's not too late as long as they don't follow through with the rest of the plan. If Misa never gets the second Death Note, if they don't continue killing, then this can all be over once and for all. With its mind and heart at war with itself, Light is at a complete fog as the task force makes their way back to HQ. He only comes back to himself when he feels the cuff around his wrist being removed, just as he'd planned all those months ago. Elle gives Light a strange look and asks if he's okay. Not wanting to give anything away, especially with his path forward still a blur, Light tells Elle that he's simply still processing all that has happened. He tells Elle that he's going to get some fresh air to clear his head, and asks him to tell the rest of the task force that if they need him, he'll be on the roof. Not waiting for a reply, Light leaves and begins to make the long trek to the roof of the building. Stepping out into the crisp, cool air, he can't help but note that there's a hint of rain in the air. Slowly, he walks out to the middle of the roof and looks up at the sky, the war within him rising to a crescendo so loud he feels like his skull is going to split in two. Suddenly, Light gasps, his hands flying to his chest right over his heart as he feels a painful pulling sensation. Is this a heart attack? The feeling happens again, only much stronger, and Light knows on some instinctual level that this is something much worse than a heart attack. He falls to his knees, clutching his chest as he feels his heart being torn in two, the screaming in his head only becoming louder as the pain continues. Finally, the pain becomes too much and he falls to his side, completely passed out. As soon as Light loses consciousness, two strange orbs shoot from his chest. One, bright and white, shoots into the sky before it disappears. The other, glowing dimly with a purple-black color, rockets off the side of the tower, soon becoming lost in the forest of buildings. Meanwhile, on the roof, the body of Light Yagami fades away, completely vanishing just as the door to the roof is beginning to open. Soichiro Yagami stands in the doorway in complete confusion, wondering if his son has already descended from the roof to rejoin the rest of the task force. Far, far away, in the world that never was, a small boy opens his eyes for what could very well be the first time. His head is spinning a little, and he has no idea where he is. Sitting up, he looks around to see a strange city filled with buildings that seem to reach the sky. It's dark, with the only light available coming from a few windows of the buildings. There aren't even any stars out due to the massive cloud cover. The whole place feels dark and cold and uninviting. The biggest indicator that something is amiss is that there isn't a single soul to be seen. Usually in a city like this, there'd be at least a few people either doing nighttime work or stumbling home from a night on the town. He looks down at himself and blinks. Something about his appearance feels off. He examines his hands and they strike him as strangely small. His legs also look short to him. He turns to the closest building and looks at his reflection in the glass. There, staring back at him with a resting bored expression, is a boy that can't be any older than 14, wearing a pair of black shorts and a collared shirt with a black bow tie. He looks younger than he expected, which in and of itself is strange, as he can't remember himself being anything except what he is. Though granted, he can't remember anything at all before right now. That realization makes him blink. He can't remember anything. Not even his name. He feels oddly unbothered by it? Don't people usually feel very put out when they wake up in a strange place with no memories of who they are or where they are? His attention is pulled away by the sound of approaching footsteps. Turning his head, he sees a tall man with long black hair tied up in a ponytail, wearing a long black coat and an eye patch. Walking up to him, the man gives him an amused grin, saying that they hadn't been expecting to add to their ranks again so soon after the last one, and that the boy must be one stubborn little menace. He asks what the boy's name is and he shrugs, before asking where he is and what the man meant by they. The man sighs and says that the boy must be one of those ones, before handing him a black cloak, like his own, telling him to put it on and follow him. He'll give the boy a rundown on the way. Seeing this as his best bet at getting answers, he quickly does as he's told, slipping the coat over the top of his clothes, before tailing after the man. As they walk, the man introduces himself as Zigbar, a member of a group called Organization 13. They're a group made up entirely of nobodies, which are beings without a heart. He informs the boy that he's now a nobody, which is why he's taking him to HQ, so that he can be brought into their group. Raising an eyebrow, the boy asks if he has any say in this. Zigbar returns the boy's raised eyebrow with one of his own. You got anywhere else to go? There. The boy asks why they're wanting him in their group, since he thinks it's a safe bet that he's a good bit younger than them. Wouldn't he be a liability? To this, Zigbar just snickers, and tells him that he's not that much younger than their previously youngest members. And besides, something about the boy's appearance caught their leader's attention. That alone is an incentive enough. Any further questions the boy asks are only met with vague answers that explain nothing, so he decides to let the matter of what exactly the organization is for rest for now. Before long, Zigbar leads the boy to a massive white castle floating above the city. The inside of it is just as white as the outside, almost hurting his eyes from its glare, and the structure is like a labyrinth. though he can't tell if it's trying to keep people in or out. Walking through the countless halls, they eventually come up to a tall man with tan skin and white hair. He turns to them, his yellow eyes making the boy feel like he's being evaluated, like an unusual and unfamiliar breed of dog at a show. After a few seconds, he speaks, speaking of things that the boy thinks are rather obvious, about how he wants answers and how he can't feel anything. The man holds out a hand, and a set of glowing letters appear in front of him, forming a word. However, before he can read it, the letters are getting scrambled around until they come to a sudden stop with a golden X placed in the center. The man tells him that this will be his new name, and he reads it carefully. Tilxgh. Tilks. He speaks it aloud, testing it out. It's not a bad name, he guesses, but he's not really sure what a good name would be either. With that, the man, Xemnas he says his name is, leads them to a large room filled with seats set in a circle. There are varying heights, but even the shortest is still ridiculously high in Tilks' opinion. Xemnas tells Tilks to wait where he is until he's called, and walks forward to take his seat in the highest chair, while Xigbar takes another empty chair. Patiently, he waits and listens for Xemnas to address the others in the room, informing them of the newest member to their organization. Taking that as his cue, Tilks walks forward until he's standing on the small platform at the center of the chairs. Looking up at the faces that surround him, he sees eyes staring at him with varying levels of curiosity and disinterest. Eyes of complete strangers looking at him like he's a puzzle to be solved, or in a more morbid sense, a subject to be dissected. While others give him no more than a glance before looking away, his existence nothing more than a footnote, another cog in their organization's machine. He's about to turn away when his eyes catch on a blonde boy and a raven-haired girl sitting side by side, who can't be more than a year older than himself. Unlike their compatriots, these two don't look at him like he's a curiosity to be dissected, or an insignificant pawn. These two's eyes are filled with something that Tilks is surprised he can even recognize. Small, welcoming smiles grace their faces, while soft eyes seem to promise that everything is going to be okay. Simultaneously, all too soon and not soon enough, Tilks is ushered away from the chairs and led to a separate room, where Xemnas and a tall man with long blonde hair are waiting. The next few minutes pass in a blur, but by the end of it, Tilks stands in the center of the room with a small stained-glass window beside him. It is round with a band around the edge. Just inside is another band that is covered in circles, 19 in all, while a large disc sits at the top, with 7 circles placed within. The inner band spins around, allowing the circles to be seen through the middle circle of the top disc. Below the disc, at the center of the window, sits a strange symbol, which looks like an upside-down heart with 3 arrows attached to the end. It's mostly red, with some blue, black, and white highlights. Apparently, this is his weapon. Xemnas calls it a summoning window, and supposedly, Tilks should be able to summon different creatures to battle for him by using it. He has no creatures to summon right now, but with time, practice, and study, that will change. That night, as Tilks lies on the bed in the room provided for him, he wonders just what he's gotten himself into, and if, maybe, he might have been better off on his own. And that, everyone, is where I'm going to leave the story for now. Join me next time as we see Tilks go on his first mission and begin to adjust to life in Organization 13. I'm Rune. See you next chapter.